This program is powered by thevirtual.show, making your offline events virtual. Ladies and gentlemen, the host of WEBIT Virtual, Dr. Plamen Russev.
Hello, wonderful WEBIT community, and thank you for joining us for another WEBIT Virtual. We start and we talk this week about Fintech. It's one of the most exciting themes and one of the hottest topics on the international technology innovation scene. The time when banknotes are called obsolete, the times when things are changing so fast. These are the times we live in, and we are talking about the most pressing issues. And definitely Fintech is at the forefront of all these challenges and changes. But unlike many other industries, with Fintech, we see a very positive boost in the adoption of technologies. We see a lot of new rounds in investments. We see a lot of new inventions, innovations coming up next. So there will be many interesting things to talk in. Today is a special day because we have the leading media panel. We have Fintech-focused journalists who are reflecting on the realities of how the new world is moving and what are the new trends in financial technologies and, of course, the connected blockchain, crypto, etc. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you my fantastic panel today, and we start the discussions. Here is my first guest in the studio.
Angela Antetomaso is a TV presenter and journalist with more than 20 years of experience. Her broadcasting career started in New York at CNN and then at Bloomberg Television. After a few years, she moved to CNBC in London, working as a presenter for Class CNBC and also hosting her own daily talk show. Angela now lives between London and New York, working as a correspondent at Forbes Italy.
Hello, Angela. How are you?
Hi, Plamen. Lovely to see you again. I'm very well, thank you. And hello to everyone who's following us today.
I'm very grateful for having you back with us. This is important for two reasons. First, because it's always great to have people that we share and we know each other. So we build that beautiful WEBIT community around us with faces that we trust. And obviously we have a fantastic positive feedback also from our viewership, from our previous editions together. So thank you again for being with us. And I'm very, very grateful for another returning guest to our studio. There she is.
Kristina Lucrezia Cornèr currently works as the managing editor of Cointelegraph, building an editorial strategy and ensuring content quality for a leading media outlet dedicated to cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and fintech. A speaker at international events, she is a passionate advocate of environmental consciousness and women's rights.
Kristina, welcome back to you too. How are you?
Thank you very much, Plamen. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Welcome. Be welcome here. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to greet all the WEBIT community.
Grazie mille. Indeed, our community is growing bigger and bigger. Only for the past 3 months and a half, we have received over 150, I think it's already 160, 170,000 new registrations to our database. That's so fantastic and so empowering when we have such a phenomenal guests like Kristina, like Angela, and those that I will be presenting you in the upcoming minutes. And their words and their impact to be heard globally, it's really rewarding. Thank you so much, WEBIT community, for being with us. Allow me, Kristina, to bring in the next two guests to the studio.
Ankush Chibber is managing editor, Mashable Middle East. He is a multi-skilled editor and digital media content strategist, with 14 years of cross-platform experience, specializing in editorial strategy, brand building, audience growth, and most importantly, impactful storytelling. Ankush edits the Middle East edition of Mashable, covering technology, digital culture, and business in the region since the brand's inception in 2019.
Ankush, welcome to WEBIT. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here on this webinar and to be with the esteemed panel of journalists. I love this topic, and I'm sure this is going to be a great chat for the community.
I'm looking forward to hear your opinion on so many different topics, and representing the Middle East region is also very interesting because I know there are many things happening in the region. I follow it closely since we were also having a bunch of events there. I know a number of people who are movers and shakers in the region of fintech. So it will be fantastic to have you with us. I would like to introduce, with your permission, my last guest, and we go into the whole panel discussion. Here is my fourth guest here.
Simone Filippetti is currently a financial journalist and correspondent at Il Sole 24 Ore, a field in which he has over 20 years of experience, and he has covered the subprime crisis and Lehman collapse in New York. Simone is now the UK correspondent for the same paper. Additionally, he has published 2 books.
Hello, Simone. Welcome to WEBIT.
Hello everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to participate in this very interesting panel today.
It will be very, very interesting because of all of you, Simone, and it's a very special one. Until now, we were having a number of Americans, a number of French people, but this time, for the first time, we have 3 out of 5 participants in this live virtual event having been from Italy or with Italian roots, even though Angela is now in New York, in US, but we have 2 Italians from Italy and 1 Italian who is now in US. So let me have you all together now in the studio. Thank you again for joining us, and we should start this wonderful discussion on fintech with, let's say, an overview of what really, and I would like to have you all participating. We have so many questions to ask and to answer, but I would like to hear your opinion all the time. So don't worry, just join the discussion, especially now when we have Italians, so many Italians. It will be a wonderful discussion. I look forward to it. So let's start with a question on professional journalism, on fintech in times of crisis. Maybe Kristina, you could lead that answer and have everyone else also joining the discussion. So what is your professional challenge now? Is it to follow up with all the news without being able to be there where it happens, or what is the thing that is challenging for you in this COVID times?
Thank you, Plamen, for your question. Well, actually, I would be honest with you, it's not that from the practical point of view, so much changed for us. We were a decentralized team from the beginning. We have journalists and editors and art editors and artists all over the world. So basically, we were just working, doing our job. The only technical change was that we stopped going to conferences, but as we are now here at an online wonderful conference organized by the WEBIT Foundation, we can see that even this issue was solved by different organizers of conferences. I would highlight one thing that for me was very important during this times of crisis. I think that it made us more human and more compassionate, because this was maybe the first thing ever in this century that actually made us united with the same problem. And it definitely affected communication within the team of our publication, but also with the outside newsmakers, PR people, partners. And I find it wonderful that the personal issues and safeness and health was always the first question to be discussed at every call we had within the team or outside the team. So this I would call the biggest impact on the journalistic sector from my point of view.
I hear you, Kristina, and Angela. In regards of the overall advantages of fintech, what would you say that was the thing that made fintech so explosive in this COVID time? We really see so many startups. We see a lot of rounds being closed. We see more and bigger adoption of financial technology services around the world. So what is your take on that?
Well, as Kristina was saying, Plamen, this has changed the way we see the world and the way we do things. And obviously, even just the fact to be here, shows that things can be done online rather than being in person. Obviously, it's a different feeling, but things can be done, and we can be in different parts of the world, like we actually all are at the moment, and still get things done in a nice way. The important thing in all of this is exactly that fintech companies already have the technology to do that. If you consider, for example, there are loads and loads of companies who had to adapt, or who are still trying to adapt to this. And adapting is absolutely crucial. This is the key of everything now, because this is an unprecedented situation. This is something that never could have been imagined before, never been seen before. So people had to start from scratch, trying to see how can we change, how can we adapt. Embrace change has been the number one, task in all of this, and in some cases the number one challenge, obviously. Fintechs now actually have already the technology in place to do all of this. So there were companies who have been emerging, like, they were already there, they were already ready. They already had, again, the technology to do all of it, and immediately they came to light. And we could just do plenty of names. Just let's take Zoom, for example, where we're working now. Let's take so many other companies, and they are taking advantage of this, or they are actually exploiting this just to grow, to keep on growing. And then there are also other companies who have to adapt, will have to adapt. And going forward, I think we will see lots of consolidations in the sector, mostly in the fintech sectors, because there will be loads of companies. It could be mostly banking. Just consider all the digital banking that has started now. Many people who never heard of digital banking before had to start now with online banking, for example. And this will see lots of smaller and medium-sized fintech companies probably being acquired by big financial institutions. So also other kind of companies in other sectors, I think.
And thank you so much, Angela. That's obviously what is happening now. But we see trends which are really groundbreaking. They're changing the way we perceive reality. And one of them is getting rid of things that we always thought we're going to have in our wallets, called banknotes. And what do you think, Ankush? Is it the beginning of the end of the banknotes in the world in our lifetime?
Well, it would be presumptuous of me to say yes right now, instantly. But the fact is that the banknote, which is about 100, 150 years old at most, is on its way out. When the outbreak happened, one of the first questions in a lot of markets where cash is heavily used, especially in the emerging markets, was, can it spread by the banknote? Can it spread by the newspaper? So people really did have that fear. It did not help, like that the WHO did not come out clearly and say yes or no, and there was still a lot of debate about it. There have been previous studies which say that used banknotes can carry bacteria, fungi, viruses, and so on. From what I saw in the markets that I cover, there was a really quick move away from using banknotes. Even small retailers started keeping point of sale machines. You had P2P apps that suddenly saw a surge in use. So all the trends point to yes, that they're on its way out. That being said, there are countries like Egypt, India, Saudi Arabia, where 80 to 85% of the population is underbanked or unbanked. And then these people will not go away from cash only because it helps the informal economy outside the banking system, outside the taxation system. And therefore, it might not die a quick death, but it'll definitely see reduced usage in urban areas, urban markets, and especially with the middle and upper middle class. But I still see it being used in certain countries. Developed nations, I think Scandinavia has already taken a lead in terms of phasing out banknotes. So we should see less and less usage of those.
Indeed, the COVID made some very dramatic changes in the society, and definitely one of them we will still be about to explore will be in fintech. During the fintech week, we have these talks with the CEO of banking of Revolut, with multi-vast channels, etc. So it's a very interesting mix of opportunities we all see. But Revolut is a great example of how apps and digital solutions are basically replacing as you mentioned, in terms of banknotes, 150 plus years of history. But we're talking about replacing the concept of exchanging the monetary value with our hands. So Simone, this is for you in regards of what really is happening now in fintech. What is the future as per your take? And I would like to have everyone here really involved. Fintech and the death of the traditional banks, maybe. What do you think?
Hi, hello. Before speaking to the future, I would like to speak about the past, which should sound like strange, but some years ago, where I was a total rookie about fintech and bitcoins, I was invited to a forum in Luxembourg. Luxembourg is one of the most advanced countries in fintech and cryptocurrencies in Europe and all over the world, probably. There was this guy speaking where I am now, like with the role, and he was asking his audience this very simple question: who is or which is the biggest bank in the world? This seems a very easy question to answer to. The answer might be, I don't know, HSBC here in England, or Goldman Sachs, or JP Morgan, or whatever of the biggest bank you can imagine in the world. Every of these answers are wrong, because as of today, the biggest bank in the world is not technically a bank, but it's the Alibaba group. Alibaba, which is the Chinese Amazon, as a division which is called Alipay, which manages all the transactions. So when you buy an item on Alibaba, you've been transferred to the digital platform of Alipay, which is very similar to PayPal for eBay and the payment transaction. So the point is, as of today, Alipay manages some 1.13 trillion yuan, which is equivalent to $168 billion. And this huge amount of money makes the Alipay technically the biggest bank in the world as of deposit. So what's the point? The point is that the digital transformation, which has begun with the fintech, with the blockchain technology, has been stealing the banks one of their traditional legs, which is the digital payments. Make me do another example. I guess everybody of you and everybody in the audience has booked a room or an accommodation with Airbnb, because I guess Airbnb is one of the most used digital platform to book an accommodation all around the world. Well, so what do you think is the job of Airbnb? Do you think that Airbnb is an accommodation business? No, the answer is again wrong, because Airbnb is just a bank. I don't know if you know how the Airbnb. Yeah, I don't know if you know how the Airbnb business model works. It's very simple. Have you ever booked a room or an accommodation with Airbnb? Probably you did. So when you book and you click, the Airbnb system would immediately charge your credit card or your electronic wallet you are using for paying. The point is, the host or the person who is renting that apartment, that room for you, will only receive the money the day you are entering the room, so the day you do the check-in. So let's say if you are booking now a room to go to, let's say, Capri, and as far as we are, most of the panelists are Italian. So let's say you wanted to go to Capri.
It's a wonderful discussion to have, and a wonderful place to go anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But let's assume you are booking now a room in Capri for, let's say, the beginning of September. You will pay now Airbnb, but our Airbnb will pay the guest, the owner of the house in Capri, only when the host will make the check-in. So it means that Airbnb will keep your liquidity, the money you are paying, for 3 months in their pocket. So this is a banking activity, and nobody is realizing it. All the big talk about Airbnb being the biggest digitalized hotel in the world. Okay, this is very interesting, but the real business for Airbnb is picking the money now and paying his clients 3, 4, 6, maybe 1 year later. What is going to do Airbnb with all this liquidity? They are investing their liquidity. So going back to square one, the point is traditional banks are dying because many of their traditional businesses, like digital payments, have been stolen by new business coming up. Let's say Alipay or let's say Airbnb, but those and hundreds are developing every day. So and this is only the beginning, because the next phase would be, what if with the cryptocurrencies you can do many other businesses which today are a traditional business of a bank. Ankush before was mentioning thousands of people in the Middle East which are unbanked. So can you imagine all these people, if they can have access in the future to financial services, to digital financial services, just making a click or entering into a digital environment which is operated by blockchain and using cryptocurrencies as a money. And this is my last provocative question to the audience.
Simone, such a wonderful start of the discussion on your side. And honestly speaking, after all these years, we've been having some discussions also with the founders of Airbnb, etc. But I never thought of that particular angle in regards of the future role of these large e-commerce platforms in the area of the financial institutions, particularly banks. Let's not forget that many telcos in the previous periods were trying to enter the banks business, and there's been a bunch of very successful examples. For example, M-Pesa, first in Kenya from Vodafone, and now they own like over 60%. It's kind of a monopoly, isn't it, of the payment systems in Kenya, and quite a substantial amount of fintech services around Africa. And now we see e-commerce platforms doing that. So banks are not safe, are they? And Kristina, that's a question for you. What is the the alternative to the traditional banks when it comes to crypto?
Well, that's a great question, and I really enjoyed Simone's speech, and I would like to highlight that I agree with him that actually crypto can be a means to pass this banking stage for people who are unbanked and get directly access to the platform for payments, receiving services, paying for services without passing through banks. And that's incredible. That's really a power of crypto. And I think the crisis, as we all had the occasion to see, impacted everyone's life and our interaction with banks. So even if you are based in the US or in Italy, you had some difficulties to get to the bank to sign any paper or something. Or I don't know, I had an issue, for example, my cards from one bank were blocked because of some security issue. And as I couldn't go to the city where they were issued, like they were remained blocked for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
So this is what crypto can solve. And this is what crypto should solve. And I would also add our views to the fact how we solve the problem of unbanked should be thought from the perspective of those people. I think we are all very used to focus on our conditions of life, and sometimes we lack this approach of seeing the world with the eyes of others. COVID, as I told in the beginning, made us a little bit more human. I think we should also use this opportunity in order to imagine ourselves being in other countries that are unbanked, that don't have access to some simple services, simple resources as water, as money, as banks, whatever. So this is definitely a power of crypto. And I would like to add some rumors and actually ask other panelists and you, Plamen, what do you think about them? So last week we had this rumor surrounding PayPal, that first PayPal is hiring crypto engineers. And this definitely made some people, especially in the journalistic sector, to think that maybe the payments giant plans to allow its users to buy and sell crypto directly. This definitely will change the world, because one thing is paying crypto through those services that we have for the moment, and another thing is to pay crypto through PayPal, because Airbnb also uses PayPal. For example, if we take...
No, it's going to be groundbreaking indeed. And we will see a huge surge of latecomers who will basically make the early adopters the big winners. And that would be a huge change. I agree with you. So the question is, if anything like this happens, and if it happens in the next foreseeable future, how this will basically change the whole landscape of financial services and banking. That's my question for the panel here. And Kristina, please finish your answer. And I would like to hear on that particular question also Angela joining and all our guests.
Well, in my opinion, I will be very brief. I think that crypto will permit to distribute the wealth more democratically, because as Simone told, there won't be these big organizations that are accumulating resources, liquidity of other people. Blockchain's power is transparency. So in this regard, definitely all blockchain payment services are much more accessible to different people from different backgrounds, from different countries, from different companies. I would like to hear others' opinions.
Yes, what I would like to say Yes, what I would like to say is that I actually agree with what has been said so far by Simone, Kristina, and the blockchain, cryptocurrencies, everything is going to be absolutely in focus, and lots of things are going to change. I think that we will still see the largest, biggest banks, at least, not only survive, but only keep on doing quite well for two specific reasons. One is that they are big enough to have access to funding, and funding now is one of the main issues, as we all know, also with fintech companies, for example. Most of the fintech startups, fintech medium-sized companies rely on funding, rely on investors, on venture capitalists for funding. And funding at the moment is not doing so well. In the last quarter, there has been a decline of 45%. Why is this? Because of these problems with liquidity, we are saying how much liquidity is still out there. And the problem is that fintechs will need a liquidity. The best way to do that, in a way, will be just kind of either partner or being acquired by the biggest banks. The biggest banks now have not had many problems because they already had some online technology in place. They will need to step up the technology. They will need to do lots of things with that technology because many people will stop doing traditional banking. But the best way to do this would probably be to acquire some technology, fintech companies to get better. So yes, we will have very likely a spike in cryptocurrencies. Blockchain will be here for many people who up to 3 months ago never heard of it. But I think that the traditional big financial institutions will still be able to survive and use the liquidity the way it can be, with Airbnb, with Alipay, also Amazon. Let's look at what has happened to Amazon in the last 3 months. The COVID crisis has made Amazon the biggest company in the world and Jeff Bezos the richest man in the world. Why? Because of all these people who are relying on its online services and all the people who are buying and all the people who that how much money of that, that $5, $10, $20, $100 that we spend every day on Amazon are going to Amazon itself before going to the retailer who's selling you things. So this is what's happening now. This is the big COVID revolution that's here to stay. And we'll see lots of companies probably failing, many of them already done. It depends really on the sectors, unfortunately, but probably fintechs will have a lifeline, and this will be coming from the big financial institutions who will need the technology, the fintech startups to improve their technology in order to survive themselves. But I think that they will be able to survive thanks to this.
So, Ankush, after 500 very successful for the industry, for the banking history, so to reframe my question, after 500 years of explosive banking business and becoming the major deal makers in the world, the people who set up the rules, what are the new challenges the good old bankers are facing these days?
Yeah, right. I think if you look at the last 20 years, there were two large financial crises that affected the banking or the financial services industry. There was the dot-com bust, and then there was the the global financial crisis of 2008-9. The key with both the crises was that it affected banks, in an institutional way with their operations, but never really impacted their consumer-facing businesses. The COVID crisis is the first crisis that directly impacts how the interface with the consumer. Not only is there a short-term shock in terms of people suddenly not wanting to use banknotes or not being able to go to bank branches and so on, but there is also the economic impact of the outbreak. Now, what I see from now on is that there will be the consumer will try to stretch his cash. The consumer will try to save his cash even outside the banking system. You can see that happening in Lebanon, where it's an absolute mess in terms of the people not being able to access their funds and so on. And how this will change is that suddenly the balance of how we interact with the banking system will actually tilt towards the consumer's way. And the consumer will start looking for alternatives to the traditional banking system. It's already happening in terms of the kind of apps they use. You mentioned M-Pesa. That's a great example. Not only in Africa and East Africa, but in places like Afghanistan and so on, it's pretty popular. And in fact, I would go as far as to say that other payment systems that are built on telcos actually are, just copycats of this service. So I think the consumers will start to look outside the banking system. They will start to look at P2P payment systems. They will try to look at organizations that help them stretch their cash. For example, in the Middle East and in India, there are now apps that let you buy stuff and pay later. They're able to quickly analyze your credit profile depending on what you're trying to buy, who you are, how you paid the bills, common databases, and so on. Quickly make a credit decision and able to decide whether or not you can buy this product on credit. Now, imagine that versus how we go to a bank and ask for credit. Yeah, that it's here an app is doing it for you in 10 seconds to 30 seconds max. Whereas the bank will make you fill up a big form of somebody's going to call you, then going to make you feel bad about your credit score, and eventually say, nah, we can't give you this credit. So the consumer is going to start looking for alternatives. And this is going to impact the traditional banks in a big way and how they operate. And Angela's point is actually pretty on the money over here. What I've seen is that a lot of startups that are operating in this space, especially the ones that have raised funds in the last few months, are actually doing some sort of partnerships with banks, whether they're offloading agreements, whether they're taking funding from banks. But it's the bank realizing that it needs these alternatives now because the consumer is flocking to these alternatives. And so the traditional way of doing banking, retail banking, consumer-facing banking is going to change. There's no doubt about that. And to follow on with what she said, there is going to be a lot of deal making that's going to happen as well down the line. There are going to be a few apps, a few businesses that are going to stand in different geographies. Eventually, there will be consolidation. Big banks that have the money to spend on innovation and digital transformation will be able to survive this. Smaller ones that stick to the old ways will be merged in or die out. That's how it's going to be.
The digital transformation happening live now. Some people might say, oh my gosh, such a messy time, but actually, what would you expect if all these layers are moving and trying to match to this new reality? And Simone already started about the new banks, the new Alipay and Airbnb as being major players in the market of financial technologies. And we were discussing, so we have the fintech, we have the digital payments, we have the cryptocurrencies and banking. We already touched base, and I would really get now everyone involved in this. So Simone, where do you see the next 2 to 3 years? What are the major changes that you foresee in the fintech industry? They obviously will draw changes in most of the industries that we know.
Personally, I think that what's going to happen is very simple. In the next, let's say, 5 years, every merchant, every shop will turn into a bank, small, big, medium-sized, because every merchant, every activity who involves a payment will be digital, and this is going to be accelerated by the COVID and the pandemic, which had unfortunately happened. For the humanity. So the point is, every activity which involves a digital payment will manage the payment by itself. So every shop, every activity will turn into a bank, eroding, stealing business from traditional banks. But let me go back once again to the past, because this is very something funny and which relates with the majority of this panel today. Banks have been invented in Italy in the Renaissance. In the 14th century, the Florentine bankers used to lend money to the King of England, here behind me. I mean, this is a fake choreography, but I live in London. At some point, King Edward III was so in debt with the Florentine bankers because the king was funding his war against France, the famous 100 Years' War. So he was so indebted that he went bankrupt, he went bust, and the bankruptcy of the UK monarchy brought also the Florentine bankers to go bankrupt, but the banks didn't die. So the point is, of course, this is the hand. I mean, in the near future, this is the hand of traditional banking. But if you ask me, are the banks going to die? My answer would be, I'm not so sure. Maybe no. There's this very funny phrase from another English author, which is Mark Twain. Mark Twain used to comment that the news about his death were exaggerated. So I think that, conversion this phrase today, so any bank would today reply, the news about the rumors about our future debt are quite exaggerated, and this probably may be true. But one point is very important. I would like to stress what Kristina said before. I didn't know, I wasn't aware that people is probably moving into cryptocurrencies. That will be a terrific, groundbreaking event for all the fintech and industrial services and banking services industry. The point is also China is trying to move, is considering to enter the cryptocurrencies. What is the point? All the cryptocurrencies today, let's say Bitcoin, which is the most famous and is the most common cryptocurrency today. As of today, Bitcoin is more an investment, is more an asset than a currency, than money, because you can own Bitcoins, but where or how can you spend those Bitcoins? You can do you can use Bitcoins in very few activities. There's no such a way to spend Bitcoins, except going to your bank and convert your Bitcoins to traditional money, traditional cash. But then you have some problems. First, fiscal problem, because you have to pay taxes, because it is considered like bringing back from abroad currency. And also you have some problems with your bank, because the bank will charge you a lot of fees to do that. And of course, the banks are willing to not to offer the best exchange rate on the market. So the point is, if a Bitcoin or every cryptocurrencies can become a real money, I mean, something you can use to make payment instead of something which you keep on a banking account, hoping that its value will increase. Of course, this will be the turning point, the turning key to transform the entire market, the entire industry, and the entire banking system.
Indeed, Simone. And many people are conscious to know the answer. Actually, I get most probably like you, a number of questions, sometimes more, sometimes less. Now with the FinTech Week, a lot. Should I invest in Bitcoin? I say, do you call it investment? Then I'm not sure. I'm not giving you investment advices, but that's the biggest challenge now, and the biggest question of how we are going to transform our trade and commercial platforms into accepting all these new crypto solutions, which are already out there for a long time. We're talking the past 5-6 years. Well, you can't compare the 500-600 years of banking history with the 5-6 years of crypto, Definitely there is a multiple of 100 that it's easy to calculate, but still it is there and we see it. And now I go back to Angela and Kristina, both of you. Particularly Angela, you touched base on the innovation and innovative ecosystem, and obviously it's all about the startups. That's the contemporary tool of innovation that we see. Because we don't have too much time left, we only have like 10 minutes and there are so many things to wrap up. Let's touch base with that particular topic. What do you see around you in that innovation ecosystem? What are the most exciting news that come from there? And you already mentioned that there is some delay in funding, which in different areas we see differently. Actually, on the big, large-scale funding, we see quite a movement. So what is your take on that, Angela?
Yes, Plamen, as was saying before, there has been in the last quarter a fall of 45% in funding. Does not mean that this is not going to be there again, because fintechs are absolutely crucial companies now. They are not going to disappear. Probably there will be some who will kind of disappear, will fail, but it will be very little according to me. Because if you think about it, now we do need fintech. And the reason for this is that they already have the technology in place, as I said before. They have the ability to adapt. They are very agile. They move quickly. They move very, very fast in changing their business model. They're changing everything. They can start as, let's also go back to talking about Airbnb or anything. They can start like a holiday place or retail and everything, and then they change and become a bank. And this is happening everywhere. On top of everything, talking about retailers, I mean, we have seen already in the past few years in the UK, for example, that the big retailer, we're talking about grocery shops, they are becoming banks. They are offering you credit cards. They are offering you, to become their clients, not only when you go grocery shopping, but also banking. They even do lending. And this has been there already for the past probably 5, if not 10 years. That means that they were already thinking that everyone is going to try to get a slice of this banking thing now that is possible, possible to get there by using the technology. And that's why, going back to your question, Plamen, technologies or fintech companies, from the smallest ones to the medium-sized ones, they will survive because they have the ability to adapt, and they have the technology in place, and they have mostly the size, the capacity to change, capability in this case, to change very quickly. They will be acquired if they cannot make it by themselves, that they cannot have access to funding, but there will be lots of banks who do have direct access to funding, the traditional banks, and there will be lots of other companies, from retailers to anything. It can be real estate, can be tourists, companies, can be anything. Every company that needs to survive now will need to do this just through fintechs, by acquiring fintechs, by partnership with fintechs. I think that this is the main thing at the moment, that evolution is absolutely key. Technology needs to be stepped up, and this is not necessarily a choice anymore. This is a must. This is something that has to happen, and this is for everyone, even for restaurants. Now there are so many restaurants not accepting money anymore, cash anymore, and only digital payments, and this is for all sectors.
Let me have this in a wrap, because we're really pressed by time, and I want to hear your 4 opinions on the most pressing, I believe, challenge now in fintech. It's all about the new frauds and the new threats that we have, cyber threats, etc. Many people, in order for the adoption of crypto and digital payments to take even further and wider place, we need to make sure that there are some really clear solutions to protect the users. And some would say we just learn how to hide our goat and to dig it in our yards, And now look what you're doing 600 years later, or actually it's more like 2000 years later. You are trying now to bring our assets into the digital space where we have no idea what is happening. So let's have a wrap with this discussion. Where do you see, and you take it from here. I'm not going to ask anyone to start. Please give our WEBIT community your opinion on where and how we are going to secure the wealth of the people. Because if you mentioned, Simone, Bitcoin becomes more like gold, right? You didn't say this though. I said this, but yeah, because you cannot trade with it. You can just use it to protect your wealth one way or another from the turbulence times. But if people think like this, so where is it heading? How do we secure this, and where do you see the biggest challenges in this? Who's starting first?
I can just say something if it's okay with you, because I wanted to talk about this very quickly, and then I will leave obviously room to the other.
Yeah.
Cyber attacks have seen a spike of 283% in only 3 months from February to April. You know what that means? That we have been saying about everything that's happening now, fintechs, partnership, and being acquired, consolidation in the sector, everyone is changing their nature, everyone is embracing change. The most important thing, the most crucial thing, and thank you for your question, Plamen, is exactly how we are going to do security. Because if e-commerce is booming and the digital banking is booming, obviously so are cyber attacks. What is to do now? Well, now there will be all the fintech companies again that will take care of security, and they will be the ones who will probably do much, much better than anyone, because this is key now. If everything is going to be done online, digitally, then there will need to be some reassurances and some technology in place that protects everyone from this, because everyone will be online from now on.
Thank you. This is definite. It's needed. Kristina?
Well, that's a very interesting thought. I would just like to ask you a question. What is money? Money is an imagined thing, and it has been imagined since the invention of our culture. People, Homo sapiens, like to invent things in order to communicate between themselves. And I think that money is this imagined concept that is always transforming. I don't like to talk about death of traditional finance and developing of a new finance. For me, it's actually one long process that definitely sometimes wiping out some old technologies, all the imagined orders, but at the same time, it's the same way that we are going all together. So crypto, in my opinion, is something that won't be a complete alternative to the traditional finance. It will be an alternative, and going towards diversification in terms of store of value, as Simone said, in terms of payment. And I invite everyone to check Local Bitcoin's website, where you actually can see the map of different places in your country that accept cryptocurrencies. And sometimes you will be surprised to see, I don't know, once, for example, I discovered that a tango school, dancing school of tango here in Padova accepts Bitcoin. That was incredible. So step by step, educating ourselves, educating our regulators who are also trying to understand how to deal with the cryptocurrencies and blockchain, educating customers, educating banks, we will reach step by step a new level of digitalization of our payment system. So just try, and you'll see that crypto is not so risky as you may think.
You're, of course, an ambassador of crypto, Kristina, and doing great job with Cointelegraph, etc. So appreciate your positive outreach, but still crypto and digital currencies, and I have to say this to our WEBIT community, which is obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world of digerati. And they all very know well that it's still risky, and still but of course, that's normal with technology. Everything is risky. I would like to hear the opinion on this, and this, unfortunately, is our wrap of our other participants. Ankush?
Thanks, Plamen. I'll try to be brief here, but I've been covering fintech for about 15 years now. Back when we used to call it payments technology, we used to not call it. And back in the day, I used to cover companies starting mobile apps, banks starting mobile apps, or in many cases, credit cards and cards. The challenge has always been this for financial services. How do you increase your depositor base while also making the method of increasing this safe, secure, and simple? So that's the big challenge in terms of where fintech and how it will go. You can, Kristina is talking about crypto, but I've mostly lived my life in emerging markets. There's a vast population that will not relate to it or understand it as a currency. They might understand it as an asset, but they won't understand it as a currency that they can trade it. So from those days, I know that the challenge for banks, small fintech firms has always been make something that's simple, usable, and also not easily compromisable. And this is an ongoing challenge. It will not get, nobody has the magic potion to it. Hackers and cyber attackers are always one step ahead of you, if not two. That brings me to the point that you can't do this without the big banks, without the big without the big bucks in being able to invest into cybersecurity. A smaller startup, a smaller P2P solution is always at greater risk than a larger organization, just because of what they can put in terms of securing the systems, the transactions, the processes, even guaranteeing the processes. Where I see the space going from here, you will see a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of fintech businesses that will start off from the economic impact of this crisis on the consumers. So stretch, save, invest. And from the financial operator point of view, it will be, how do I increase my depositor base? That will again be the question.
Thank you so much, Ankush. We are all on the same page. I would like to thank all my participants in this wonderful discussion, which is a wrap of a fantastic FinTech week. And grazie mille to all of you, and shukran, Ankush. It's really a pleasure to have you with us, and looking forward to welcome you again back to the WEBIT Virtual Studio. In the meantime, wishing a wonderful weekend to all our wonderful viewers from all around the world. Announcing next week's content. It's the week of corporate responsibility and sustainability, and it is a wonderful step ahead into the next upcoming events, where we shall be having the Planet Earth week and others. So it's a number of weeks ahead which are very close to my heart, because it goes for sustainability, for resilience, and we shall be talking about inclusion, which is, I believe, more and more important in the times we live. Thank you so much all for being with us. Thank you for joining us, wonderful WEBIT community from all around the world, and I'll see you again next week.
This program is powered by thevirtual.show, making your offline events virtual.